In the mid-1990s, the blue and yellow sign of Blockbuster was as iconic as the Golden Arches. They controlled the way the world watched movies, operating nearly 9,000 stores across the entire globe. At its peak, Blockbuster was valued at $5 billion, a retail titan that seemed completely untouchable. But beneath the surface of this entertainment empire, a fatal flaw was waiting to bring it all down. This wasn't just a failure of technology. It was a story of ego, debt, and missed opportunities. This is the true story of how Blockbuster lost everything and how they built their own replacement. To understand the collapse, we have to go back to Dallas, Texas in the year 1985. David Cook, a man with a background in data software, saw a massive gap in the market. Local mom-and-pop video rental shops were small, disorganized, and often lacked the latest Hollywood hits. Cook realized that people didn't just want movies, they wanted a vast selection and a professional experience. The first Blockbuster store opened with 8,000 tapes, far more than any competitor could ever offer. The success was instant, and soon investors began to notice the incredible cash flow being generated.
Enter Wayne Huizenga, the man who would turn a single store into a global powerhouse.
Huizenga applied the same aggressive growth strategy he used in the waste management industry to video rentals. By 1988, Blockbuster was opening a new store every 24 hours across the United States. They weren't just renting movies, they were buying out every small competitor that stood in their way. In 1994, the company was acquired by Viacom for a staggering $8.4 billion. Friday night became Blockbuster night for millions of American families looking for entertainment. The business model was simple, but one specific part of it was incredibly profitable: late fees. By the late 90s, late fees accounted for nearly 16% of Blockbuster's total revenue. But this reliance on penalizing customers would eventually become their greatest strategic liability. In 1997, a man named Reed Hastings was charged $40 in late fees for a copy of Apollo 13. That frustration sparked an idea for a movie rental service that used the mail and charged no late fees. He called his new company Netflix, and at first, the executives at Blockbuster didn't even notice them. By the year 2000, Netflix was struggling and offered to sell themselves to Blockbuster for $50 million. Blockbuster's CEO, John Antioco, reportedly laughed the Netflix team out of the room. They viewed Netflix as a very small niche business that would never survive the mainstream market. It was perhaps the most expensive mistake in the history of the modern entertainment industry. While Blockbuster focused on their massive physical footprint, the world was quietly moving toward digital. Broadband internet was beginning to change how data and, eventually, movies could be delivered. Blockbuster tried to innovate, but their massive debt from the Viacom years held them back. They spent billions maintaining stores, while Netflix spent millions building a superior algorithm. In 2004, Antioco finally realized the threat and moved to scrap late fees and launch an online service. This move cost the company $200 million in revenue and infuriated their investors. Carl Icahn, a legendary activist investor, began a war for control over the company's direction. Icahn wanted the company to stick to its core business of renting movies from stores. The internal conflict paralyzed the company just as the competition was reaching a fever pitch. Netflix was no longer just a mail-order service, they were preparing to launch streaming. At the same time, Redbox kiosks were appearing in every grocery store, stealing the casual rental market. Blockbuster was being squeezed from both ends: high-tech streaming and low-cost convenience. By 2008, the financial crisis hit, and the company's massive debt became impossible to manage. Their stock price, which once traded at $30, collapsed to just pennies. In September 2010, Blockbuster officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was a humiliating end for a company that had once dominated the cultural landscape. Dish Network bought the remaining assets for $320 million, hoping to save the brand. But it was too little, too late. the world had already moved on to the next era of media.
One by one, the thousands of stores began to shut their doors for good. The liquidation sales were a grim reminder of how much value had been lost. By 2014, Dish Network announced it would close all remaining company-owned stores. Yet, in the small town of Bend, Oregon, something strange happened. The local Blockbuster there refused to die, becoming the last one left in the entire world. It became a tourist attraction, a living museum of a bygone era of entertainment. Inside, the smell of popcorn and plastic cases still lingers, just like it did in 1995. But the story of Blockbuster isn't just about nostalgia, it's a warning for every major corporation. Success can often lead to a dangerous blindness toward the changing needs of customers. They were so focused on protecting their current profits that they failed to invest in their future. In the business world, if you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will do it for you. Netflix is now worth hundreds of billions, and their original content dominates global culture. They are the giant that Blockbuster could have owned for the price of a few mid-sized stores. The physical media industry has almost entirely vanished, replaced by the convenience of the cloud. What remains are the lessons learned from one of the most spectacular falls in corporate history. It's a story of how a company built on data eventually ignored the very data that predicted its end. Today, the name Blockbuster is a punchline, a relic of a world that no longer exists. But for those who remember the Friday night rush, it represents a lost piece of community. The power shift from physical to digital was sudden, brutal, and completely absolute. Blockbuster didn't just lose a market, they lost their relevance in the blink of an eye. The empire is gone, but the ghost of the blue and yellow brand lives on in our memories. Next time you hit play on a streaming app, remember the $50 million deal that never was. For more stories behind money, business, and power, subscribe to StarBrief. Don't let the future pass you by. Stay informed and stay ahead. We'll see you in the next story.